But before I get to the formal part of the opening of the meeting, I want to share something with you. First of all, many of you know that last fall I informed the Board of Trustees at Ocean Leadership that I would like to step down sometime in early 2015, and as the president. Having said that, many of you know me that this gives me an opportunity now to say a few more words about. Why is everybody laughing? Especially Bob Carell. But I want to share something with you that I feel pretty strongly about, because this will probably be the last time, actually, that I moderate this particular forum. And as I said, many of you know that I don't miss an opportunity to express my opinion. Over the last several years, I've talked about and I've written about, some of you might even say I've preached about, the value and changing support, both politically and financially, for science in this country. And in this last year, it's really increased quite dramatically with the situation of the NSF peer review system. And I think it's of concern. That change is going to have and will continue to have significant ramifications on how we do our science and how we interact with the public and the policymakers. And in the case of today's meeting and forum, with the planners in the cities and towns that actually make the difference, because as we know, that's where the rubber meets the road. What I worry about, though, and this has concerned me before because I've seen it before, is the way our community reacts to difficult times, like this one. We do a good job of going back to the safety of our institutional and laboratory wagons, if you will, and we do a good job of circling those wagons. The problem is, and this has been stated by me before and many other people, is that, and this community is not unique in this, but we tend to point the guns inward when we circle the wagons and not point them outward. And so we spend a lot of time and a lot of energy worrying about ourselves individually. And I recognize that needs to be done when you're supporting a laboratory, and I recognize it needs to be done when you're supporting an institution and leading an institution or a university. On the other hand, I would suggest to you that if one can work together, then one can accomplish a lot more. But I'd like to suggest that if we continue to adopt, and these are my words, and it is a self-centered attitude, in the long term, it's going to evolve into our field, I fear, shifting into more of a boutique science and not the science that we can really accomplish as a community. And we'll miss an opportunity, and this is what I'm really passionate about, to really make a difference in this world for the future benefit of society. I mean, after all, we're talking about 71% of the planet, right? And so it's our responsibility to do that, everyone in this room. So I want to submit to you that society needs each and every one of us to work together to address the myriad set of challenges facing all of us, from sea level rise to ocean acidification. We all know the issues. And it's really our responsibility to answer their call. And that's part of the reason for today's discussion at the forum. So I would suggest that we need to find more ways to work together effectively as a team and not as a gaggle, if you will, of individuals and institutions. So this issue is really important to me, and I've been on this issue for several years, and I'm going to stay on this issue for several years. So I can assure you that into the far future, you're going to continue to hear me beating these drums, because I feel that we can really make a difference in this world if we do it together. So I look forward to talking with you further about this issue over lunch and tonight at the reception, and I hope you'll talk with your colleagues about it as well. So now on to this year's Public Policy Forum. We're here to discuss today the urban ocean, which is it's kind of a relatively new topic for our community, especially to consider for a forum. I would submit to you that if this subject was brought up 5 years ago, I would probably be laughed out of the room, and many of you would too if you brought it up. But it's been a changing world, a major changing world. But you know, in a way, it's a bit embarrassing to say this, but especially given that humans have settled near bodies of water and have used the ocean for security, for commerce, for nutrition, recreation, and sanitation for thousands of years. But we, as oceanographers and people that study the ocean in various ways, often think of the ocean as the waters on the continental shelf, or the deep blue sea, if you will, thousands of feet deep, far from humans. And the public mostly thinks of the ocean as the beach they visit, near home, or on a vacation, say in Hawaii. However, I think it's fair to say that the public's perception, as well as our own, has been shifting pretty dramatically lately, given the many ocean-derived tragedies, and I use the word tragedies, that have occurred in just the past few years. Namely, Hurricane Katrina, Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Irene, Typhoon Haiyan, the Indonesian and Japanese tsunamis, and of course the Deepwater Horizon oil disaster. They have all, if you think about it, they've all affected urban areas, either directly or indirectly, in pretty significant ways. And I believe that most of us in this room see the natural world changing rapidly. Rising sea levels, altered jet streams. I got a kick actually out of the term polar vortex. I grew up when it was called the Arctic Front, but I guess marketing is a good idea to have new terms. And of course, the melting polar regions, changing ocean currents, acidified waters, and obviously the biodiversity loss. So all of these changes are something that we're well aware of. But, you know, we really need to recognize that as scientists, policy experts, and administrators in this room, that in a way we're all uniquely trained to look at these changes over a long time series. And that's the important aspect of it. We really better understand the implications of these changes, even if we can't perfectly predict them at this time. But unfortunately, this view is not often held by a number of our politicians or the public, who often see things as black and white, right and wrong, now or never. Now, this is not meant to be a criticism. It's just a fact. Decision makers and the public need facts and conclusions to base decisions on, such as what bills do they support in Congress? Do I buy a house on the coast? Do I sell a house on the coast? So we can't afford to just, and this is another use of the term sequester ourselves in our laboratories and our offices, or for that matter, inside the Beltway, and focus on our own personal interests. I believe that we have an obligation, a responsibility, if you will, to society and the next generation, and a responsibility to return, and we hear this often, a benefit to the taxpayers who, let's face it, support the research that we do and support our jobs. Now, I'm not saying that all research has to be applied in nature, if you will, but we need to do a better job of applying our science to societal benefit. It's the way we talk about it, the way we express it, and the way we communicate it to people. And, you know, those of you who know me best know that I'm an eternal optimist. It's one of my positive characteristics. I would also suggest to you it's one of my failures. But it's very simple to me. Humans need water to live, and having a half-empty glass attitude of life doesn't sound to me to be a winning strategy. So while there may be dysfunction and stalemates, if you will, in Washington, I do hold a lot of promise for the work that's being done at the local level across our nation. That's why we have populated our panels today, this year in our forum, from a local planning perspective. Those of you that have been involved in this recognize that that's really where the rubber meets the road. So my hope is that these experts, if you will, and purveyors of this kind of work will convey to us, especially the scientists here today, the challenges that they face. And if you will, the opportunities that science has to help them protect and enhance their urban environments for the next generation. Because as I mentioned, these are serious issues that we're dealing with nationally, but it affects us at a local level. Our community really does need to do a better job of providing information in a timely fashion to decision makers, and in a way that they can understand and act upon. And I want to give you an example. In my previous life, when I was at Woods Hole, I got a call one day from a congressman in Massachusetts. His name was Congressman Joe Kennedy. And he was in a car on the way from National Airport to the Hill to vote on whether they should decide on a sewage treatment plant, a secondary sewage treatment plant on Deer Island in Boston Harbor, or whether they should build the pipeline and the 9-mile pipeline. And there was a difference of around $8 billion. And he wanted to know my opinion. I suggested to him that maybe I could call him back in a couple minutes. And I called a number of people and got them in my office rather rapidly in sort of a panicked tone on my voice. And to me, that was an example of people needing information quickly. Now, you could argue that I was not prepared. And I probably should have been prepared because that was a big issue. It's a big issue nationally. It was one of the biggest expenditures of public funds in the history of the United States, except for maybe the big dig in Boston. But it was a huge sum of money. And so I'm suggesting to you that those of you that are in institutions that are impacted, are potentially impacted by these big, large projects, need to be thinking about that and getting ahead of it and talking with your people and individuals in your institutions. You don't have the answers. And my answer to the congressman was, we give facts. And so facts were presented, and we don't tell them how to vote, but we give the facts. And that's what we do as scientists. We give the facts to help the decision makers make up their mind. But I think that's a good example of something that came up that as I said, was not prepared for. And you could argue I should have been prepared for it. If I thought I was at one of the top oceanographic institutions in the world, how come I wasn't prepared? So I hope today that example and the dialogue that develops through some of the comments that you hear on the panels, and that you'll start to think yourself and also for your institutions and for you yourself individually, how do I help then in preparing for some of the things that we're faced with? And you know, one of the big ones, of course, is sea level rise and the superstorms. You know, Venice has been sinking for a long time. So where have we been in as a community in thinking this through? And so Superstorm Sandy hit, Katrina hits, and then people start talking about, are we going to build barriers? How are we going to do that? How many billions of dollars are going to be spent? Well, we need to get ahead of that, I would suggest to you. And there have been typhoons throughout history. So again, I hope today will stimulate your thinking, and that you'll begin to start to decide on your regions and how you can help the people that are going to be speaking today, because of the regions throughout the regions of the nations, and again the many entities that are represented. And I would suggest to you, and maybe forming some partnerships. So I am always looking for action items at the end of a meeting. Hopefully there'll be some partnerships that evolve and develop out of today's meeting. And the reason I'm saying that is, if we don't do it, who is going to do it? I mean, look around the room, right? I mean, this is the core of it. And I would suggest to you that that's the challenge that I would place on you as well as on me. So we're gonna wait a couple minutes. I wanted to get done a couple minutes ahead of time. Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island is going to show up, so I'd like you to sit still. He'll be here in about 2 or 3 minutes, but I wanted to finish my comments, just to give people time. If there's a question or a comment that some of you would like to make about my comments, I'd be happy to entertain those now. And then I'd be more than happy to cut you off when the senator walks in the door. So, thoughts? I mean, you all have been involved in some of this. Yeah, Don.
After leading the organization for several years, you have to, this is Don Bosch, University of Maryland. After leading ocean leadership,
Is that a, oh, she's coming.
Muted. Oh. Never mute me. If after leading this organization for a good number of years, and do you have any advice to your successors, the board, and the new president, with respect to meeting the challenge that you just gave to all of us?
Oh, Don, you know me. I have a lot of advice. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, actually, at the board meeting. But I think with respect to this subject, one thing that I hope will be helpful is to continue with these kinds of forums that are subjects of interest to society in general, not just subjects of interest to scientists, and to continue to embrace and engage the other sectors of the community. I think what we're seeing is more and more regional interest in these issues. Right now, because of the political situation in Washington, I think it's hard to get a lot done nationally, but maybe we can get things done nationally by doing things regionally. But I do feel that these types of activities are really helpful, and the board at Ocean Leadership and the new leadership may want to consider ramping up these kind of activities. And as you know, we have subcommittees at Ocean Leadership, and we may actually want to think about answering your question in a broader context and actually putting together a subcommittee to deal with that particular issue, because we don't have a lot of time at our board meetings and our members' meetings. For those of you that are not aware, we have a group called the Ocean Futures Group. That's a steering committee that's actually engaging in issues of importance to the members and the trustees of Ocean Leadership. And they've identified 3 particular areas to start with: education, diversity, and technology. But this is another one that one might want to look at carefully, is the benefits. And so without further ado, thank you, Don, for that question. It's a pleasure to introduce Senator Jack Reed. I want to remind you that he's from the Ocean State. He's also a member of the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committees and the Appropriations Committee, which is dear to our hearts. And as we know, it controls the purse strings of the federal government. He currently chairs the Subcommittee on Interior and the Environment and works tirelessly to help with federal funding, not only in the Ocean State to create jobs and strengthen infrastructure and support the economy, but nationally as well. The senator is also on the Department of Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, so I think it's going to be interesting to hear from him and his perspective on how research will fare given the austere DoD budget environment, as well as the interior agencies, such as USGS, Fisheries, BOEM, and BOEM. And he's the second most senior member of the Armed Services Committee, so we're especially interested in his perspective on the urban ocean. I'm just delighted that we can kick off the meeting with the Senator, and thank you so much, Senator, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. So please welcome Senator Reed.
Thank you very much, Bob. I first want to thank Bob for his gracious introduction, but also for his extraordinary leadership. For 6 years, you have led the consortium with great skill and great vision. So thanks so much, Bob, and to all your colleagues that are here today. We are very proud in Rhode Island to be known as the Ocean State. We have the University of Rhode Island. It's a terrific school of oceanography. So oceans are very close to us in many, many different ways. And I also have to applaud my colleague, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's done a superb job in the United States Senate of helping organize an ocean caucus, of helping to keep attention focused on